Welcome to the ultimate podcast experience with conversations about politics, religion, finances, and the meaning of life, and all the other subjects and stories that Nana told you not to bring to the kitchen table, and a whole lot more. Join our hosts, James the Red, You'll Be Back, and Sam the slippery smooth producer as they settle the ultimate question: have y'all heard about this?
Daddy, looks like a living legend and an out-of-work bum look a lot alike.
I'm like, obviously you've never had a hard candy Christmas.
I was a twinkle in my father's eye.
Why did you need 400 cases of Coors beer?
I mean, a clown that maybe gets wronged or something.
So I go to a barber shop.
But they do it every single week.
Depravity will be over if you just listen to us.
But not for me.
Not today, Satan.
Good morning, Sam and James.
Good morning.
Press that record button.
It's done been pressed.
Oh,
Let's just
no.
keep going over and over. Press that button right now. No, do it now. Do it now.
We've got a lot to talk about.
We always have a lot to talk about.
Unfortunately,
I mean, good stuff.
These thoughts have not come to us yet.
Listen, if you're at home and you're doing housework or you're listening on your drive to work, look, no matter where you're listening, if you're doing homework, whatever, we're here just to give you a laugh, kind of come along beside you, make you feel good, make you think a little bit, make you feel good some more.
Don't think too much, though.
No, I don't think too much.
Y'all, hey, we'll get into this, but today we're gonna dedicate this episode to our year in review. Have y'all heard about this? Where podcasts do that? See how I popped that in
Have
there?
you heard that people actually sit and
this?
think about the year that they just had?
Year in review. We started this podcast. Our first publication, we just looked it up, was on March the 7th, 2022.
A day that will live in infamy.
Oh my goodness. Speaking of a year in review, probably the best thing you could do instead of listening to this one is to go listen to the first 21 or 22 episodes.
Yeah, you really have to get the backstory to kind of know what you're in for if you're listening to an episode of Have Y'all Heard About This? Because there's a history and a build up, and you got to know. There's a lot of inside jokes, and if you don't know them.
But I do appreciate. I do feel like you can come in at any time and pick up.
Yeah,
it's not completely.
Oh, absolutely.
There's something.
Yeah,
for everybody.
this is not the Star Wars stuff.
No, you know what we ought to do? We ought to go back and start recording the prequels.
Ah,
the backstories.
The backstory.
It's 1975. Yule comes out kicking and screaming. How about we also look at some things that we could do better in our podcast in the next year coming up? So, like, for instance,
like some New Year's resolutions for the podcast?
Yeah, like some good bumper music. Sam, I don't know why we don't have bumper music. I mean, you are the slippery smooth producer.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the intro.
What is bumper music?
Just
like in between subjects and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Transitional music.
Oh, my gosh, guys. Is this place haunted?
Yeah, there's like a flashing light going on.
It's just
over
a
here.
poltergeist.
Did you guys used to watch scary movies when you were a kid?
I'm glad you brought that up. Because, yes, I watched everything from a very early age, and that was probably not good.
Yeah. I never liked scary movies. Like, I literally, first of all, I was always completely creeped out of, like, demonic stuff, like demonic
very
activity.
Much, yes.
So if there, you know that movie Crossroads? The movie that Ralph Macchio, is it Macchio?
Ralph Macchio, yeah, the Karate Kid.
Yeah, the Karate Kid, and he played that guitar player that apparently sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Robert Johnson story.
Robert Johnson
Is that
story.
where that trope comes from?
Yeah. I went down to the crossroads.
Okay.
Anyway, I was like, 10 years old when that movie came out, and my friends were like, this is the greatest movie ever. It scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
That somebody could go to a place and sell their soul to the devil for something.
But he learned to play guitar.
Yeah, but golly. See, I didn't get into that kind of stuff.
It's the reason that kind of piqued my interest so quickly when you said it was, we just returned from our whirlwind trip, for the holidays, seeing all the family, and I'll keep the names anonymous to protect the guilty.
The guilty.
But Alexander, who is 7, our son, has started talking to me a little bit lately about Pennywise, the clown.
Oh my God.
I was like, whoa. Where have you seen, heard anything about this? Oh, I saw it at, Graham's house. I'm like, come on, man. Like,
do you want to hear a story, little boy?
Well, they were watching the movie It.
Oh my goodness.
Who your grandparents were?
I can't tell you who was, but my wife will be mad. She'll ask me later, and I'll have to tell her in person. But the person who kind of was responsible for the 7-year-old getting to watch a horror movie, thought nothing of it. But they came from our generation of, it's just a movie.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the baby boomers were not very discerning about stuff like that.
Not at all.
I mean, movies came out that were labeled PG, but these were full of like horrible profanity.
Oh my goodness!
Listen,
I go back and watch it, and I'm like, what in the world?
So, all right, you mentioned the rating system, and when we were growing up, everything was rated R, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so, like, I remember from an early age. So I was born in '75. So you guys just go back and see when these movies were released, and you'll get an idea of how old I was watching them. But all the Friday 13th stuff, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Poltergeist, maybe that wasn't the scariest in the world, but that's kind of scary when you were a kid. But you didn't even think about it. I remember walking into a theater one time with my brother, who is 18, so he could get us in, to see a movie that they had put an advanced rating on. It was kind of the NC-17.
Yeah, it was
rating.
Like, this is more graphic.
Yeah, it was really like, this is this is not a good movie.
Yeah.
It was called The Gates of Hell. And the build up that week to go and see that, to me, was just, I can't believe I'm going to see it. I'm going to see it. We get in there, and I'm with my brother. The place is packed. Hickory Hill Cinema in Florence, Alabama, which, by the way, is now a church. And they turned a movie theater, like a multi-screen movie theater. And we get there, and I'm just sitting there prepared to be scared to absolute death, looking forward to it. And guess what? The reel broke. Yeah, it
not
never
today,
played.
Satan.
Not today, devil. Never played, and maybe looking back, what if that was just the Lord protecting my young, innocent, already corroded mind?
It was.
That really could be.
And I never saw it since. I've never even attempted to go and watch.
Oh, so you never went back and got it on VHS later? Because it probably came out 6 weeks later.
I think back then it would have come out on Betamax.
What is Betamax?
You don't remember the Betamax? So there was this competition between VHS and Beta, and there was 2 different platforms, and I guess there were different manufacturers of both platforms, but the cassettes were slightly different in size.
Beta was a smaller cassette.
It's smaller, and apparently, from what people have said later, it was better quality. Or maybe that could be just the spoils, the bad losers or whatever. But people were like, Beta was actually a better quality, more fidelity, better sound, better picture. But for whatever reason, VHS won out, and so that was the platform that got released back in the early 80s, I guess.
Yeah, well, and it's weird talking about the better quality, and you think about what we watch today.
Yeah.
And it's almost not even the quality of the input. It's that the device you're watching it on is like 1,000 times better than the TVs we grew up with.
I think that's because I grew up on VHS, watching VHS tapes and stuff like that. I remember my dad going and buying a DVD player. He was like real excited, and I was like, "What's chapters? Like, why are they in chapter form? What is
right.
What is this, a book?" Like, it scared me. First DVD I ever watched was the movie Babe with the pig.
That's a great one.
That's a great movie.
That's a great one.
I'm glad we went from the Gates of Hell to Babe.
That's such a wholesome movie. But yeah, I remember him buying the DVD player. But the thing that always ticked me off about the VHS is like it was like the fuzz and the. Do you remember that?
Yeah, you could get that.
And then you had to hit the track. Like, what is tracking?
Oh, I forgot about tracking.
What even was that?
I think it had something to do with the tension it put on the magnetic tape. Like, it kind of like tightened it or loosened it so that it would kind of, because it's just rolling and it's just those images are coming through on it. So
did you know about VHS? I watched an entire thing. This is one of those things that I do. I just love is like learning about things like how a VHS player worked and misconceptions,
things that are now obsolete.
Yeah, exactly. I love learning about like useless information, like trivia stuff. But the VHS player is interesting. I always thought it just opened that little gate and read the tape. But no. There's like a whole process in there where it opens that little flap, pulls the tape out,
Right.
like into the tape. Like it almost like mutilates the tape.
It's an engineering masterpiece.
And then it is because it runs the tape on an angle so that they could, like, it reads it at an angle so they could fit more information.
Kind of like the Star Wars thing, you know, as it's coming out at an angle at the beginning, you know, it's giving you the backstory.
Yeah.
You know, the backstory of Star Wars when it first comes on, and you got it's like, you know, the Rebel Alliance was going after the Imperial.
Oh,
right.
Seriously.
We're gonna starts going at an angle.
We're gonna test your
Sorry, that was
age vernacular.
Oh no, you're good. I just was like, wait, what?
That worked out in my mind when I first thought of it.
All right, Sam, I'm gonna say the first two words, and you see if you can get the second two. And if you can't, we're gonna go to James on this contest. Be kind
to one another.
Nope. Nope.
Okay, so I'll give you a hint. Think of Blockbuster Video.
Be kind.
It was a sign they would have had on the back of their case.
Return your videos, or
you want to help him out, James?
Yeah, be kind, rewind.
Oh.
Because who wants to get a VHS tape and pop it in, and it's already 3/4 into the movie?
Man. And spoilers.
You know
I wonder
what I
how many videos were spoiled. We had a rewinder. I felt
yeah.
That was kind of bougie, I feel like, back then.
We had a rewinder. We weren't bougie, so.
You know what?
We were
a
rewinder family.
All right, this is funny because your VHS player, your VCR, also would rewind.
Exactly.
But you know what? Sometimes you just don't have enough time to rewind before you start that second movie. So you can go ahead and start your second one and put the old one in the rewinder. Y'all were
life was like at the apex of human civilization at that time.
I really do, because it was like still things were simple. There was still some like family values and to get but then it was like economically the 90s were pretty good. And I don't know how much like Clinton had to do with that, if anything. Maybe it was still the Reagan. I don't really know, because there's a lot of different kind of ideas about that, but it seemed like a good time.
My kids, especially Everett, always wants to, know about my childhood and what did you do when you're my age, and he was asking about TV commercials, like for toys and that sort of thing. So this Christmas we had some downtime, and I put on YouTube like a whole hour's worth of Christmas commercials from the 80s.
Yes.
And what struck me, number one, is the bad quality, but then number two, just the outstanding quality. The commercials were just different, and even Jesse and Corey, they were like, those commercials are just kind of entertaining. Like they're just they kind of make you feel good when you watch them. They're not edgy or political. You know what I mean? They're just they were Christmas commercials about being together as a family, and and just like Christmas candies, and just the joy of just, it just was warm. And it had I don't know if it was the quality of the video was different. Like it just kind of looked more like, you'd almost describe it as warm. You know what I mean? Like if you had a light that was like a harsh, bright light, that might kind of be analogous to today's commercials. This was kind of softer and warmer. Could have been the video quality, but it could have just been the fact that people just weren't absolutely nuts in the 80s.
Well, one thing about it is you were forced to watch them.
Yeah.
I mean, these days, like our kids will be watching YouTube TV, and they don't even call them commercials. They come up and say advertisement or ad, and the kids will be like,
oh, I know. It's completely different.
And and you can even skip through them if you've watched a few seconds of them sometimes. And so,
but you would think though that a captive audience in the 80s would have given way to a marketplace where the commercials didn't have to be that quality. You know what I mean? Like it seems like it's the exact opposite. It seems like if you have at your disposal the ability to skip a commercial, that the advertising agencies, the manufacturers would demand a better commercial.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's just the opposite. I just thought that was odd.
One thing, I have a heart for advertising, because I grew up listening to those very same commercials, and like when I was around like 7 or 8, I had a little MP3 player. Well, no, I was probably older. I was probably 9 or 10, and had a little MP3 player and had a recorder on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no! Before that, it was just a straight up tape recorder, and I used to record fake commercials, and like it was fun. Like we have some great ones. Like me and my brother, like, and I knew humor wise when I had reached, like I made it, was when I made my older brother, who's about 8 years older than me. When I made him laugh, I was like, I made it.
I would love to go find
Great.
some of those old tapes.
I may have some of them. There was some great, like one of them was Safe Horse Farms. That was one of my favorite commercials. It was like advertising this like beautiful getaway for your family, and it was called Safe Horse Farms. And at the end, like the horse attacks one of the kids, and like it's beautiful.
And they turn it into glue.
Yeah.
Well, think about some of those commercials though. Like, you know, you hear them and you just immediately think about your childhood. Like, with a name like Smuckers, it has to be good.
Oh man.
I mean, there's one. Remember the Juicy Fruit commercials? Remember that Juicy Fruit?
Yeah, there's always a song.
Yeah, there's like this catchy. It's like they actually put a lot of thought into some of this stuff. You know what I mean?
We
Even
watched
the Tricks commercials, even though they're like cringy and stuff.
Silly
they're
Rabbit.
They still had like
Tricks
a
are for
lore
kids.
to them. And
Silly Rabbit. Tricks are for kids.
We watched a documentary the other day. Oh, it was so good, man. I can't believe I've never seen this until this week. But it was a documentary about Nolan Ryan. And,
I've seen that.
Oh man, it
Outstanding.
was so good.
That
And
was
I
really good.
forgot all those commercials he did. And he he did all the Advil commercials, and I'd forgotten him, but he's like the worst actor. You know, like the way he
It was like
voices
Peyton
stuff.
Manning.
Yeah,
Like Peyton Manning today. It was kind of part of his charm too, though.
That guy pitched. I mean, it was for I think maybe it was 27 years in the big leagues, but it was over 4 decades. So he pitched in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s, and I mean, just as good on. I mean, I shouldn't say just as good, but he could still bring the heat. The day that he finally went out, you know, he tore a tendon in his throwing arm,
Yeah.
his elbow. But he was throwing. I mean, he was starting in the major leagues at 46 or 40. I think it's 46.
Was that
years
movie
old.
that came out not too long ago about him? I think it had Dennis Quaid in it. Where he was like an older guy, but he.
I think
You
they
mean The
were-
Rookie?
I think that's what it's called.
That's a great
and his name was
movie.
Wild Thing, the pitcher.
I thought that was Charlie Sheen's character, and
Well, maybe.
I don't think that was based on a true story.
That's the same movie.
Rookie?
But I think, but they even referenced that movie though in
Oh, no
in
way.
the documentary because he was so wild. Like when he would come out, you know, he would. They said that when Nolan Ryan pitched his first high school baseball game, that the first guy he hit in the head and cracked his helmet, and the second guy he hit in the arm and broke his arm.
yeah,
The third guy comes up and asks this coach to send him in a pinch hitter, and the coach wouldn't do it. And they said Nolan Ryan struck that guy out. He said, but he was so far off the plate he couldn't have hit it with a broom. He said he couldn't have hit the plate with a broom from where he was standing in the batter's box.
man, Nolan Ryan was
He's
pretty
like
incredible.
He's like standing over by the first base coach.
And in that documentary, what came out in that was just a down to earth guy, just a family guy.
Yeah,
living
and
out on
I
a
mean-
farm in Texas.
I just couldn't believe that he threw that long without a real, like a Tommy John type injury.
Yeah,
Because I mean, one of the guys that caught him said, and you know, is this an exaggeration? I don't know. It sounds like it to me, but he said that when they first came out with the radar stuff, that they were clocking him at like 101, and he said, but I was catching him. He said it was more like 108.
that's insane.
But they
Was he a Christian?
Nolan Ryan, I believe so.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
kinda-
because they, you know, it showed them gather around the table and say blessing. Yeah. He's just a good old Texas ranch boy.
That's good.
First,
All right.
first $1 million man in sports.
Guys, see if any of these are the best taglines of commercials from the 80s.
Nice,
See if any
nice.
of these kind of ring a bell with you. All right, here's one. We will sell no wine before it's time.
I'm going to say it's either the brothers, Ernest and Julio Gallo.
That's right.
Was it?
No, well, it was Paul Mason California Wine.
Oh,
I like the way we have to guess it. This is good.
Well,
I was
that's
gonna
easy.
say-
What about this one? Where's the beef?
Oh, that's Arby's, right? No, that's we have the meats.
Wendy's.
Wendy's.
Hey,
is
I was
where's
gonna.
the
That was those old women. Hey, I was gonna say. Do you remember? This may be on there, but Reuniti on ice.
Oh, yeah.
Reuniti so nice.
Yeah.
It's an iced wine.
Reuniti. It was like an ice. Was it like a wine cooler kind of thing?
I think it was. Yeah. It was.
What about
Are these from the
wine
80s
you pour
or are
over
these from the
ice.
90s?
I think these are from the 80s.
Darn.
Oh, this is, yeah, shoot. This
I
is
was-
3 years before you were born.
That was a twinkle in my father's eye.
You know what though?
Sam,
I
sit
feel
back
like
and
though, a lot
relax.
of these commercials
Some of
though,
these probably ran over.
they
little
ran
bit.
over a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah,
I
see
mean,
if I
where's
can
the
guess any of
beef? I mean, he knew that
Yeah, I
one.
mean, like I don't want to grow up.
I'm a Toys R Us
I'm a
kid.
Toys R Us kid. Oh, listen to this one. So kiss a little longer, hold hands a little longer, hold tight a little longer. With
Dentine?
Big Red.
Big Red. Oh,
Yeah.
I had cinnamon gum. That was close
Yeah,
enough.
you were close.
Man,
Pardon me, but would you happen to have any Grey Poupon? What about a commercial that just
That was
kind of
great.
lit up the whole culture? I mean, like everybody was talking about that commercial. There were parodies of it everywhere. Like you would literally
the guy was
stop.
in a
people were
limousine.
parodying a commercial. That's
You've never seen that
you made it.
commercial?
No, what is it?
So it's like it's Grey Poop. Grey Poupon is this mustard. It's like a Dijon mustard. That's all it is.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And there was this commercial they started with this guy sitting in a limousine and he's being chauffeured around and he's eating lunch. And this other guy is in another limousine and they're about to cross each other. Well, the guy
So
in the
brilliant.
one limousine realizes he doesn't have any Grey Poupon. He's like, how am I going to eat this dried chicken without Grey Poupon? So they stop and he like flags him down and he goes, pardon me, but would you happen to have any Grey Poupon? And the guy's like, well, of course I
Well, of
do.
course. Because
that's-
only
And it went nuts. Like people were literally like sitting in intersections, rolling down their windows. Hey, do you have any
Dude,
Grey
that's
Poupon in there?
that was a huge pickup line. You know,
Yeah. Did it work?
when you ride the strip, you know, you get the girls to, you know, stop and roll the window down, and you pull the old Grey Poupon.
Do you remember it was kind of like a southern take on that? I can't remember what company, but it was the jelly one. Remember that? Can you please pass the jelly?
Please patch the jelly.
What was that even for?
Not Smuckers.
No, it's terrible though. If you have an ad that good and people
nobody
don't know
remembers
the
the brand.
product,
I mean,
then you
they-
failed.
could
know
you
what I mean? Like,
imagine-
you gotta,
Yeah.
There may be someone listening to that Big Red commercial like, oh, and he said the competitor, Dentine.
They're like, dang you.
You have high hopes for this podcast.
Oh no! What about this one? I've fallen and I can't get
Oh,
up.
it's the Life Alert.
Life alert.
Life Alert. Oh, I know that one. Because they'd be like,
Hey, listen, the older I get, the less funny that one is.
You'll just like, a little too close to home.
When it absolutely, positively has to be there overnight. FedEx. Have you guys ever seen the commercial? This is not even a commercial. I think this is like a YouTube video that somebody for some self-defense class somewhere put together. But it's an old man. He's about 75 or 80 years old. And he's actually teaching senior citizens how to like defend themselves against like muggers and attackers. Have you all seen this?
Did somebody break a hip?
All right, God, you
Oh
gotta go.
my gosh.
You gotta go to YouTube and look this up.
Okay.
So there's this video of this old man, and he's trying to solicit, people to come and buy his services. So he does this commercial, and he's walking out to his car one day, and this guy walks up with a switchblade and like opens it right in front. He goes, "Hey man, give me everything." And the guy and the old man says, "Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance!" And he like clutches over like he's holding his heart, and he goes, "Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance!" Well, the guy's like freaking out, like he thinks he's just giving this guy a heart attack, and so he just keeps on, "Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance!" And he goes, "But not for me." He pulls out a 38 out from under his
I
jacket.
have heard about this. I don't. That's probably not real. Or that's probably not like a real commercial.
It is a real commercial. It is.
What?
It is.
So,
He goes, "But not for me." It's
all right,
hilarious.
going back to the 80s movies, I've heard it said, in a meme, I think, these days, when I was a kid growing up, I thought quicksand was going to be a much bigger problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Same thing with switchblades. Was
Dude,
that not
everybody had a
just
Oh, I
Switchblade.
know. So the switchblade. the
back in the
switchblade.
day? That was the we even for Christmas or holidays or something, birthdays, we would get like these switchblade combs. They look like a switchblade, and
I
when
had
you
those.
I
yeah.
have one.
when you hit the button,
today.
it popped out.
Sounds like I've got one in my pocket right now.
I mean, it's like that was the most ominous sound. Everybody, you always thought I'm going to be in a dark alley somewhere, and I'm going to hear, and it's the
It
switchblade.
was like that scene in Crocodile Dundee when the guy puts a switchblade
Ooh.
in his face.
That was. a
You know
good
what's even scarier about that though is thinking of all the movies with the switchblade. There's a surprising lack of blood in any of those movies. Like nobody ever gets stabbed by him. Like that's
Well, it's like watching an episode of the A-Team, and there's like they all had Ruger Mini 14s, and they were like, but nobody ever gets shot.
and nobody
You
ever
never
ran
see
out of
anybody
bullets.
ever get shot.
Nobody
I know.
ever ran out of
And they
bullets
just
in the
shot
80s.
for days.
Man, what technology was that?
I love watching those. Talking about the '80s, those old. There were a lot of them: Dukes of Hazzard, Knight Rider, Smoking the Bandit. Any of those where they would show the car, like go airborne
Yeah.
from hitting a speed bump.
Right.
It'd go like 30 feet in
It'd
the
go
air.
30 feet in the air. And
just
go
because
over.
they needed to at
Right.
that point. and so you would on film you would start seeing the front of the car just dip, like this is not going to end well. But then they would show the other side when it land perfectly and keep moving.
But even one of those, even half of one of those jumps one time would destroy that car.
Oh yeah, I mean like the axles would bend, like it'd be horrible.
I remember. Do you remember that Vietnam drama called Tour of Duty? Did you ever watch that?
I didn't watch it.
So it was about Vietnam. It came on like at 10 o'clock on Wednesday nights on CBS, like one of those kind of deals. And I remember a buddy of mine came over, and he was a huge history buff. Like this guy, I remember thinking, I loved history, but this guy was like off the charts. He'd be like, he could name every single tank, every single weapon.
Yeah,
He's like, I knew where they were right there, and that's not, that's not Hanoi. That's a joke. And the kid's like 10 years old. And I remember one time we were watching, he was spending the night, we were watching, he goes, in real life, if you were in Vietnam and you did one tour and saw that kind of battle, they would send you home immediately. But they do it every single week.
Exactly.
And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about it like that.
Man, we did have some good TV growing up. We had some bad TV that was compelling to watch for some reason. Do y'all remember Alf?
I remember, yeah. I never watched it, but I remember.
I mean, Alf stood for alien life form, and he was he was a puppet. And like you would literally watch this show with a puppet in it, walk around. It's just fascinating to me that was in any way entertaining.
That's a good subject. What are some movies that you guys have gone back and watched and were just like, that was not what I remembered it being, or that was not as good.
It probably for me would be a lot of those 80s camp movies. You remember those like comedy camp movies?
Yeah.
And they were like, they seemed so fun
like
when you were
the kids
a kid.
Ones, like
yeah, just like I don't even have any.
There's one with Bill Murray in it.
Parent Trap.
Yeah, the one with Bill Murray. That's a definite. I went back and watched some clips on YouTube the other day, and I'm like, this is stupid. But when I was a kid, I was like, this is the funniest thing ever.
I think a movie that was really built up in my mind is a great movie, and then when I go back and watch it, I'm really disappointed. Is The Neverending Story?
I never saw that.
Never saw that.
It has a great song.
I mean, they're still playing it today, right?
Oh yeah,
They have to be.
Got a big white dog that flies. Now, on the other hand,
what about Mel Brooks' Spaceballs?
Yeah,
that was a good one. That was a good one.
That's a good one. I don't know if we can make a podcast recommendation on that one, but
there was a
good one.
So my go-to movie, like Jill and I were talking about this the other day. What is your favorite movie? Like, and all right, here's the thing: your favorite movie doesn't actually have to be your favorite movie. It has to be your answer when somebody says, "What's your favorite movie?" Right?
Because it kind of defines you a little bit.
Yeah, like if somebody says, "What's your favorite movie?" and you're like,
Ben-Hur. It has to be Ben-Hur.
Yeah. Well, how about this? How about this? A better way of asking that would be if every other movie, just shattered in the vapor of time, like you're left with one movie to watch for the rest of your life, what would it be?
That's terrible, though, because you would hate it after a while.
You don't have to watch it every day or anything.
Well, my favorite movie is Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah?
I love it. It's always been my favorite movie. Answer, at least.
It's a cultural defining movie, and it never was meant to be, but... You go back and watch it, Snowman down in Conyers, Georgia. It's a little sad in some ways, though, because you look at Atlanta and the surrounding areas, and it's like it's not the Smokey and the Bandits.
What about Big and Little Enos Burdett? He goes, "Daddy, looks like a living legend and an out-of-work bum look a lot alike."
Back to the Smokey and the Bandit. The best line has to be when Little Enos says... No. When Smokey says to Little Enos, "What's he want all that beer for anyway?"
What's he want 400 cases of Coors beer?
Because he's thirsty, dummy.
I love it. Listen, I think I could sit down. I've said this before. I think I could sit down, given the time, and probably with 90% accuracy, not only write that movie script again, but most of the musical score.
Oh, Jerry Reed
from
was
memory.
genius.
You're saying?
Yeah, from memory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did I tell you our Jerry Reed story that we heard from a quail hunting guy that we had one day?
No.
So Clay and I were hunting up at Etowah Valley Game Preserve, and this old guy was a truck driver for cattle. Like he was an auctioneer, and he sold cattle, and he would like drive them and deliver them, I guess. He said he was making a big cattle run one time. He was going across, I guess he was going across Texas, maybe. But it was late at night, and he had stopped in this gas station. He was filling up his truck to continue on his journey with all these cows. And he said Jerry Reed's tour bus pulls in right beside him. And it was like 10:30 at night. And he said Jerry Reed hops out of the tour bus, and it's like freezing cold. He's like, it's wintertime, it's cold. But Jerry Reed comes out wearing a pair of cut-off shorts, an open Hawaiian T-shirt, and a pair of like brown loafers. And he was like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like, and this that kind of Jerry Reed kind of twang that he had. So he said, we chatted for a second while I was filling up my truck, and then Jerry Reed just went back in his truck and got his guitar, and I guess came out with his shirt buttoned up and went into the truck stop diner, and 2 or 3 other guys from his entourage brought in their guitars, and he said they went in there and they got some dinner, like a late dinner, and they just started playing music. And he said, I literally walked in to pay for my gas. And he said, I looked at my watch a little bit later. It was 2:30 in the morning.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was like, my truck was still parked out there.
That is.
And he said they just
awesome.
Played and laughed. And it's just out of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere.
Jerry Reed's got a lot of those talking songs. They're kind of a song, but he kind of talks a lot. But one of my favorite ones is.
I don't like those.
One of my favorite ones is She Got the Gold Mine.
Oh, that's a great song.
And I Got the Shaft.
Yeah.
See, I like those older songs where everything was just an innuendo, and at least they weren't like,
dude, there are some old country songs. There's some old country songs that you're like, wow, like that's pretty edgy.
Yeah.
Like back in the day. Yeah.
Well, how many Christmas songs do you know that have a line, maybe I'll just get drunk on apple wine? Well, that was that Dolly Parton's Hard Candy Christmas.
Yeah.
There's that line. Maybe I'll just get drunk. And so here's my, that was one of my favorite songs when I was a kid, my favorite Christmas songs. And so the kids were asking, what was your favorite Christmas? I'm like, have you ever heard of Hard Candy Christmas? Which befuddled them because they were like, what's a Hard Candy Christmas? Even Tara was like, I don't even know what that means. I'm like, well, babe, it just means you've had a lot of, it was a bad year. Like you didn't get a lot of presents. You just got hard candy. And she's like, are you sure that's what that means? I was like,
and maybe,
obviously you've never had a hard candy
Christmas. Maybe that hard candy got dumped off into the liquor bottle.
Yeah. But my here's my 7-year-old running in their house. Maybe I'll just get drunk on apple wine. Like, yeah, maybe we should pick a better Christmas song.
Oh my gosh!
I was going through trying to find some more obscure Christmas music the other day. There's some good stuff out there that's not traditional.
Well, so this is my thing with movies: is I want to be like I think Lord of the Rings just hits all the spots for me on what I love in movies. I want to in a movie. I want it to be thought provoking. I really like movies.
Okay. You tell us all the qualities of a movie.
Yeah.
And we'll see if Smokey and the Bandit checks it off the list.
So thought provoking.
Yes.
Like
absolutely.
/ philosophical. So it could either be.
Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't watched Smokey and the Bandit.
There was a question that nobody knew. Why does he need 400 cases of Coors beer? Right, that's it.
Why does man need that much Coors beer?
Because he's thirsty.
So I think thought provoking. What I really like in a movie is I want to feel, even if I've watched this movie 100 times, I want to. There's got to be a point in the movie where you're like, they're not going to make it. Like
check.
I love that. I love that. You know what I mean? And I don't know how they do it, but that is just like a quality in some movies where you're like, they're going to make it, but you're just like, I don't know. If they can
Well, I mean, right there
this.
Toward the end when they were coming in, hot and heavy to the Atlanta Motor Speedway, they had bears all over them.
It was real touch and go.
It was.
What I never understood about Lord of the Rings, why didn't they just get those stupid eagles to come, to come a month earlier and grab that dang ring?
Did you know that Tolkien actually addressed that? And he was like, because the eagles, essentially, I think because Sauron being in Mordor, if the eagles had flown in there, they would have gotten taken down pre-Sauron. Like he would have laser beamed them or whatever. I don't know what his abilities were from the great eye. But apparently that was, it was like.
But then afterwards, what? Because
afterwards, well, I don't want to spoil the.
I mean, it's a 75-year-old book.
Spoiler alert. So, when they do destroy the ring and Sauron, sorry guys, and the tower falls. I've never read the book, so I don't know if it happens the exact same way in the book. But that's when the eagles can come in and get Frodo and Sam, and they kind of airlift them out. But it was like Sauron had to be killed before. They couldn't have just flown him in.
Why couldn't they put laser beams on those dang eagles?
One of the ideas that they had to sneak in undetected because if Sauron knew, he could have.
Is this a would this book be called a trilogy? Or
Yes,
the three of them?
very much so. Yep. Very much so. And it's kind of standalone. I mean, obviously The Hobbit's a prequel, but it's kind of a standalone trilogy. Like you don't have to have read The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Or,
The Hobbit was good.
Hobbit is very good.
I did like The Hobbit.
So my third criteria is a movie. I really like movies that kind of make me cry at a certain point. I don't know if Smokey and the Bandit fits
I cried
that.
laughing.
That's fine too.
So thought-provoking, philosophical, and it'll make you cry.
Yeah, thought-provoking / philosophical.
No, thought-provoking, they may not make
They
it.
may not make it, or like
okay. So like some suspense. to it.
suspenseful. That's good.
So let's apply that to Smokey the Bandit. Thought-provoking.
I've never watched Smokey, so you got to tell me about it.
I mean, it's a modern classic, so very thought-provoking. May not make it. We've already addressed that. And then the third one was, what was the third criteria?
Make you cry. Just make you emotional.
Okay. It's got to have like a deep emotional.
So when the Bandit and what they call her, Cricket in there? What they call Sally Field in that movie?
No, I don't think it was Cricket. What?
He gave her a little nickname. Oh,
he asked her if she ever heard of Brenda Lee.
He said, "I'm going to call you." He called her Frog.
Yeah, that sounds.
I can't tell you why he called her Frog.
Yeah, I do.
He called her Frog because she liked to jump around a lot. That's what he said. But remember when they pulled over by the creek and she said, "Do you ever take that hat off?" And he said, "I take it off for one thing and one thing only."
That made you cry.
And then they kissed. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably teared up. And that was
now
really.
Now I will kiss a girl with my hat off.
That very poetic moment in Smoking the Bandit was right after he said, cowboys love a girl with fat calves. My calves aren't fat.
I am Sheriff Branford.
I gotta watch this movie, man. It seems like a.
All right, so let me just say this: if you're listening to this podcast and you're, I don't know, say under the age of 18. You can't just go watch any movie because someone tells you it's a funny movie, right? Because
I
will say this. I will say this. When I was a kid, I watched Smokey and the Bandit every single year, maybe multiple times a year, on a little thing called Turner Broadcasting Station, which was a cable channel that was started by Ted Turner, one of the pioneers of cable TV. And so, even though we lived in Chattanooga, we got this Atlanta superstation called TBS. And they ran classic Atlanta culture, like Smokey and the Bandit from it, And so, every year that I'd watch that, it was edited for TV.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, when I was older, I popped Smokey and the Bandit DVD into my DVD player, and I sat back with some popcorn, and I was like, what in the world am I watching?
It's a different movie.
It's a different movie. And then Jackie Gleason's character in that is like, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, like from the edited version to the real version. So I'm just warning you. And kind of going back to the Hickory Hills Horror, Hickory Hills Horror. Maybe we should call this podcast the Hickory Hills Horror. But when I was growing up, we always had there was always all my friends and I would always brag about watching these horror movies. But we never actually watched them at our house. It was always somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so, you got to be the kind of parent, and of course I know our listeners are, that knows what their kids are watching, right?
Yes.
So just because
I know there's one of you out there that aren't really paying attention, but maybe you should start.
Maybe you should. Because you need to know if your kid's watching the edited or the unedited version of Smokey and the Bandit. And you need to know if they're watching The Gates of Hell, because that's an important.
Or It.
Or It, yeah.
Or Pet Cemetery.
Or Pet Cemetery. Or anything from Stephen King.
It's
except
funny.
for Shawshank Redemption.
We went and saw,
me
and my wife, we went and saw It in theaters because it was really advertised like it was a thriller. And I love thrillers. I hate horror movies. I despise
Wait, can you
movies.
describe the distinction there between
those?
There's
a big horror relies a lot more on gore and what you see.
So Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Very much so.
Oh, okay.
Thrillers really rely on what you're not seeing.
So kind of like Rear Window, Alfred Hitchcock. Have you seen that?
No. M. Night Shyamalan is a perfect example of what a thriller is.
Yeah.
He focuses on everybody's reactions to what's happening, not on what's happening.
Yeah.
Necessarily. And I think that's even his production company is called Blinding Edge Productions, and I think that even has a connection there. Because it's like it's so funny what he doesn't show you, and you're like, show me, come on, and he's just like, nope.
So it was not a thriller.
So I had nearly walked out in the middle of it because it was just like in a scene. Have y'all seen it?
No,
I read the book, and
there's a scene where this girl's in there, and then just this like essentially geyser of blood comes out of the toilet, and I was just like, I said, Chelsea, if something like that happens again, I'm out of here.
do you know the premise of it? Do you know the premise of the
I mean,
story?
a clown that maybe gets wronged or something. Wait,
So-
wait. No, it's not about a clown?
No, this
It
is
is about
the book's really not. The book's really not.
It's already hitting the thought-provoking category.
Wait, it's not a clown in the book?
Well, it is a clown in the book,
okay.
except for the clown. Okay, let me just say, I didn't like reading growing up. Like I didn't. If I was forced to read something, I'd have to read it and all this. And it took me years before I started reading for pleasure. I think the first thing I ever read that I was told to read, that I had to read for school, for example, that I kind of fell in love with reading, was Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men.
Oh, yeah.
But it's only 100 pages. And so I zipped right through. I was like, man, what a great story. You know, it was so good. And then I started learning how to read things and actually kind of enjoy them. And I got on a big Stephen King kick, and I've read dozens probably of his books. But one of them, and my point of this is, had you ever told me that I would pick up a book with a couple of thousand pages in it, I'd be like, nah, I'm not going to read that. And I think it may have had like 1,400. The premise of that book, though, was was the thing that got you. It was the thing that killed you. Like if you were, let's say that your fear, for example, was James dying in a car wreck, that's how you'd go, and it'd be the worst. And if yours was you're afraid of a clown, then that's the one that gets you. And then if yours is the one like that you're afraid of, say, a switchblade knife, that's how it. So it's your biggest fear manifests.
Kind of like at the end of Ghostbusters. Because that's what got them, their biggest fear.
Yeah.
And the guy thought of something, nice and not so bad, and it was the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. But he came back as like an 800-foot tall marshmallow man.
What I was going to say about that book was that book was so chilling. The way that we wove through those fears is I remember where I was. I was in my bed, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I remember this like it was yesterday. I'd read through some chapters and I was getting ready to close it down, like go to bed, go to sleep. And I remember my arm kind of, dangling off the bed, like I'm in the apartment alone. It's just me. And I've got my arm kind of dangling off the bed. And it actually, like, the thought crossed my mind, you better put your arm up in the bed. Like, it's like this but it was like, yeah, I think I just felt safer with my arm
safe than sorry.
not dangling off the bed.
The only time I've ever been that creeped out was when my father-in-law and I went to go see No Country for Old Men when it just came out in theaters.
Oh my goodness!
So the two of us went. We had dinner, and it's a book by Cormac McCarthy. Okay, it's about a Texas sheriff. If you haven't read the book, read the book.
Yeah, I haven't.
Honestly,
the movie's a cult classic.
It's a Coen Brothers, so you know that it's going to be good right there. But honestly,
what other movies do the Coen Brothers do?
Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yeah, Fargo.
Heard of that one as well.
So anyway, I honestly I think the movie might even be better than the book. Like this might be one of those rare occasions.
Yeah.
But so we went and had dinner somewhere just after work, and the two of us went to this theater downtown, the Bijou, and watched No Country for Old Men. And when we left, like he went home, and I got up on 27 going home. And I pulled out my phone and called Tara, and I was like, I don't have anything to say. I was just going to see if you could stay on the phone with me until I get home.
It's
I don't want to
crazy.
be alone right now. Like, I was that moved by that movie. Ugh.
That is one of those movies to where you just see this manifestation of, psychopathic behavior or sociopathic behavior where someone just, nothing gets in their way. And they just, and it's scary to think there are actually people probably out there like that, that think nothing to kill you or anyone else.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
This has
Not
been
to
a
take
very
it too
uplifting
dark,
podcast
yeah.
thus far.
not to go too dark, but that's how I feel a lot with some of these videos that come out of either somebody that's gotten shot or something like that, or a bunch of people are like ganging up on somebody, and it's like
And people are just pulling their
has
phones out and just
zero
like,
empathy.
I know.
Zero. And just even like so I was over at Hamilton Place on Wednesday before guys' night, and I was getting my hair cut. Go to a little salon over there. Is that an unmanly term, salon?
Absolutely.
I just want to. Okay, so I go to a barber shop.
Went to my hairdresser.
I just realized I may have.
He's like, I had my hair set at the salon.
It's a salon. It's just the reason I go to this lady. She is awesome. She stayed open during COVID and wasn't like crazy during. So I try to support.
Well, yeah,
business.
that's definitely a reason.
She's very
to support
freedom minded, so I try to support people like that. So I drive all the way out to Hamilton Place. But anyway, so there was somebody got the great idea. I guess it was like an after school program. I guess these kids were bussed in because it was like there was about 200 to 250 teenagers that were just at the jump park, the new jump park in Hamilton Place over kind of near the Aldi over there.
Who thought that was a good idea?
I don't know.
I don't know where this place is.
I'm not even joking. So I just saw it's just a crowd full of teenagers standing outside, and I was like, this is not going to end well.
Right.
Something's going to happen. And
where's the Aldi? Is it in the Walmart parking lot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So this is halfway in between, and I just saw the crowd. I just felt the energy and like something bad's going to happen. And I was like, and then I realized, so I'm a concealed weapons permit holder. I put my holster on that day. I forgot to put my gun in my holster. So I'm like, great. The one day, that I know something's about to pop off, I don't have my gun.
Sam's new nickname is Barney Five.
Exactly. So, Andy kept my pistol.
Well, go look up on YouTube. Go look up Gun Barrel Road Walmart Brawl. And see how many things pop up.
Oh no,
it happens all the time.
It doesn't happen all the time.
All the time.
So these kids are out there, and so I get my hair cut, and then I go back out. I'm riding the motorcycle, which that's just like if you're going to be in a tense, if you're going to be in a tense situation, be exposed to that.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, something happens, and it may have been more than 250. I may be really lowballing it, but I'm going to be conservative. 250 teenagers are just running towards me. Like, and they're not like, they're obviously not like targeting me, but it's like they're running.
How can you
they're like, man, where did you get your hair cut?
They're running from something, and it's like this herd. Yeah, they were just asking, like, hey, man, love your motorcycle. You know what I'm saying?
And you were on your bike going toward the beauty salon?
I didn't get on yet. So I'm like, because I was just like kind of observing the salon that I go to, the windows right there. So they're kind of like, what's going on? And I was like texting them and being like, so, I can't figure out what's going on. So yeah, like 250 teenagers just running. And I'm like, I'm going to stay with my bike. And also, at least I have some cover if something, I thought, I didn't hear gunshots, but I was like, surely something.
It just looked like
some violence is happening. So, so they all like ran, and then they kind of like trickled back. But I was like, I never heard gunshots, and like there were police there and stuff. And apparently somebody got tased because I was like, "Hey, little man!" I told this guy, I was like, "What happened over there?" And he's like, "Somebody got tased or something like that." And so everybody just ran.
By like law enforcement or just another person?
I assume so.
Yeah,
I assume so. But it was crazy.
Well, listen, these tasers look a lot like a gun. And so now when a police officer pulls that taser out, I could see that being pretty frightful.
Well, there was that one officer that thought she was tasing the guy. And
she goes, taser, bam, bam, bam. And I was like, oh, gosh.
Yeah, she got convicted.
Oh, wrong gun.
I hate to say it. She needs to be convicted for that. I mean, like,
I think she was.
Even if it's an act, it's just like.
I think it was like, it's not like murder or anything like that. It was like a downgraded charge, but like, manslaughter or something like that, incidental or not incidental.
And it's not like that happens all the time too. So that was either like a lack of training, or like.
Could you imagine though, just being in a situation like with 250 people like stampeding towards you?
I won't lie, like,
or you go into someone's apartment and they're like loaded and they're raising a gun at you. I mean,
pucker factor was happening a little bit.
Oh god.
Well,
but I was like, I'm gonna stand here. I'm not gonna run. I'm not gonna follow the herd here. Because it's like I'm gonna stare down whatever this is, and if it's something I need to confront, I will. But I was like, it terrified me though. It was
you know what I just realized? We have not talked about the year in review at all.
Well, no. We
just
just advise people go back and listen to them all.
That was it. Year in review. Just go back and listen to our podcast. Give us some more listens.
I think in the next year we need to just do more of the same. I mean, because this is why people love. Have y'all heard about this so much?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very detailed agenda today. We're going to do a year in review. Hey, what's your favorite horror movie?
So my whole point in saying that story, I realized I never brought that home, was people have that kind of herd mentality, and they like, and I just and no kid there was like. And maybe it wouldn't have been proper for them to step in and help the person that got tased or whatever, but it was like there was no sense of duty. It was like, no, I ain't about this, and then everybody's dipping out, and I just see that like,
or you see some 13-year-old girl getting beat up. Yeah, instead of just going out and stopping and helping pick the girl up and helping restore her humanity and her dignity, you just like pull out your cell phone and you're like bouncing all around and being like, yeah. Look at this. And it happens across demographics. It's not just one race or one socioeconomic. It's happening all over.
Do you remember that mentally challenged guy that got literally like captured by these thugs? I'll just say, and like it was in Chicago, and they kept him for like a couple days and just like tortured him. And it was like on Live Leak or like Facebook or whatever. Like on Facebook Live, just tortured this guy. Like just did some brutal stuff, and it's like.
Did they get convicted?
I think so, but it's like there wasn't the backlash that there was for things like the George Floyd incident. You know what I mean? It's like that got just right. And maybe it should have been. I don't know. Again, I'm not going to make. But it's like there's this. Obviously, they captured this dude for 2 days and tortured him, and
used Facebook to do it.
Quick little doctrinal point about that is it's interesting to talk to people about kind of. The depravity of man versus there's a little good in everybody. And it's like, you're obviously not paying attention if you don't realize the amount of evil that's out there. Yeah. And, does this person or these people have some redeeming qualities? I'm sure they do. I mean, everybody can smile and make you laugh or whatever, but there's some people out there that would just as soon, record you, suffering as to call help for you if you're suffering.
Yeah.
And it's do you
remember
really
the episode that the podcast episode about the go-karts and the governors? Remember that? We talked about, dads taking the governors off the go-karts. And, so you want to see a world that's a horror movie, just take the governor off humanity. And that governor is God's word and God and God's law. And, and if you want to see Hickory Hills horror, then that's it.
Leave people to their own devices and see what happens.
Yeah.
So I was reading last night actually a book that I'm reading through, and it was talking about. And this is so crazy. This is one of those situations where the scripture came to my mind, and then like in the introduction to this book, there's that scripture. I was like, "Whoa, God's!" But it talked about like that verse that talks about the washing of God's word. It's Ephesians 5:25 through 26 for context. It talks about husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, and that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So it's interesting that it talks about scripture having that kind of washing effect. And I do wonder, I don't know, I feel like the kind of the separation of church and state, I feel like that's had an effect on me, that kind of like idea, and being like, like mentality. I don't think we should, force religion on anybody. But it's like, if scripture does have that kind of washing effect, that it being like, having the 10 Commandments outside of a justice hall and things like that, it does make a difference. And there was in Hamilton County, there was a kind of a movement for the Bible in the schools program. And they were saying that the kids that participated in that and took that class, like the rates of delinquency. Delinquency, yeah. Was just down, and it just like made a huge difference. Just having a Bible class.
When I remember elementary school, I'm pretty sure that we would say a quick prayer before we ate.
We did.
Like, God is great, God is good, let us thank Him for our food. I mean, it was a
we did the
prayer,
Pledge of Allegiance and then prayed every morning.
Yeah.
And I don't know when that stopped. At some point,
do they even do the Pledge of Allegiance anymore?
They do, yeah.
They do, but about half the kids will do it. Half the kids don't even know what it is.
Some will take a knee.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just joking.
But, you're talking about that separation. I think that's one of Satan's tactics to say, your life can be compartmentalized.
Seems reasonable.
You've got Sam time, you've got Yule time, and then you've got church time, and then you've got NFL football time, and it's like, but that's not how the world works.
Yeah,
the world works in everything. Connections are being made. Like, all of humanity is about connections. Poetry is about connecting. Art, music, economics, politics, they're all connected. And when you take the word of God out of it, what you do is you just start leaving them to their own devices, each one of them, and then you see what happens. Right? You turn on the news and you see what happens.
Going on a very different train of thought at this point in the podcast today, but it's interesting. There have been a lot of debate, if you will, of late. Even as if you watch any of these justices be kind of interviewed by members of Congress, and they're just kind of asking them very
like, what is a woman?
Like what do you
Marsha
think?
Blackburn asked.
Yeah. And it says, what's a woman? And these legal scholars, and they know they're being kind of pushed into a corner from a legal, and they're like, well, my opinion doesn't matter. It's like, no, every bit of your opinion matters. You're going to be the one deciding cases,
right?
But we've gotten to the point now that we cannot even justifiably say, like, hey, we understand that there are some outliers biologically in this world, but for the most part, 99.99% of the time, this is how you define a male, and this is how you define a female, and so it's just fascinating to me that we're to that point that you can't even say that, and it makes you wonder. Because and I was thinking about this when we said we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, one republic under God, and we say that, and I think that's probably one of the reasons that there's been this kind of like falling away of people don't want to say that, as they feel like that they're acknowledging God, but then it's on our currency, and God we trust is on our currency, and it makes you wonder. No, here's a conspiracy. Now we're going to digitize monetization. Like, we're actually getting, we'll never totally get rid of currency, I don't think.
Just really?
Because,
you don't think so?
Well, not in our lifetime. I'm not saying it won't.
You mean like a total abolition of currency?
Right, where it's like money.
Like, there's no paper money, no
cashless.
Paper, no coins.
Oh, like a cashless society.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so, because all of that promotes, and
they
God
tried
we
it
trust.
during COVID. It was convenient during COVID. There was also like a random change shortage. Like, oh, convenient. Like,
yeah. Well, it's just, I'm just saying it's an interesting concept to me.
Totally unrelated.
To wonder what is like driving some of that.
Yeah.
What I would just call idiocy. Really, the hey, let's sit here and argue that there's a difference between wool and cotton.
Yeah. So I agree with you 100%, Yul, and I think if you want to go unravel the mystery of what's going on around us, I defined it as just the spirit of the age. And I say, go get your Bibles, open it to the book of Romans, Paul's letter to the Roman church, and read chapter 1. And that's exactly where we are. We don't have time to break it all down today, but we're at that point where I think God has given people over to their debased natures. And it's just like, you can't define what a woman is. You can't talk about what love is. Clearly, you can't talk about what it means to protect a child. In fact, there's people who openly advocate against protecting children, protecting life. You know what I mean? Like, that's where we are. And you can argue, well, things aren't that bad, or things are, but they are. Are you paying attention?
Well, and it gets into this stupid little argument of, well, what's right for you doesn't mean that's what's right for them. Well, that's why we have the law.
Right.
We've actually defined, and this is not a biblical thing, but we've defined that there are certain things that are not within the normal realm.
Right.
That you can't do that. You're not.
And I would say, and I would 100% contend that without Scripture, we never would have had those laws.
That's true.
We never would have had them. So, They would have been like Judges, the book of Judges. You know, every man did what was right in his own eye. It would have been, and it is. You see that when you see that governor coming off, and we're seeing it everywhere, right? We're seeing DAs who won't prosecute crime. We're seeing cities who are openly promoting people coming in who are illegally there. That's crime. Law and order is breaking down. That's the governor being pulled off, and you see what happens.
Well, let's go back to exactly what we're talking about with the Pledge of Allegiance. What does that say? I pledge allegiance to this flag in this country. That's
Right.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is I'm a citizen. There's something about citizenship that used to be special. And like now, to your point, it's a concept of open borders. And listen, I'll be the
we're
first
world
to tell you.
citizens now.
Well, I'll be
We're
the first to
citizens
tell
of
you
the
though.
world.
I'm a very empathetic person, and when it comes to people who choose to come here to better themselves and have more economic freedom and all that, I would count myself amongst those people that had I been put in their situation, I guarantee you I'd have gotten here somehow, some way to this land.
And you applaud that.
But there are also rules.
Right.
And now to that point, by the grace of God, I wasn't born in an impoverished third world country that I had to come here. But I'm not like, thinking that I have some sort of inherent right to go over to the United Arab Emirates and say, hey, I hear y'all give away some money every year off these oil reserves, and I need to be a citizen here because that's going to help me prosper more. Like, no, there's a rule around that.
Right.
And I can't just, or,
By the way, they would never allow you to do that.
Right.
Never.
I mean, you get your head chopped off over there
Right.
for doing some foolishness.
Yeah.
But I agree that we need. There's plenty of room and there's plenty of opportunity and all that. But we can't, as a legal society, as a country with a citizenry, with laws around that, we just can't now say, okay, none of that matters anymore.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of what the drive is
I
to
think
get
you're
away
right.
from pledging allegiance to a country and,
Well, I think
and
you
protecting
gotta,
that.
I think even your legal immigration, you do have to make sure, are these people coming from a culture that assimilates well within our culture? And I think there's plenty of cultures that do. But
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good point.
there's
how
certain
can you not
places-
assimilate into an American culture?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the most diverse, broad culture.
Yeah.
It's the great melting pot.
The people driving culture, to Sam's point, I think are destroying American, like Western civilizations being unraveled. So there's not really much to come into that's cohesive and coherent anymore.
Because I mean, if you think about like the early, like the 1800s immigration, it was from largely places where we had come from, like European countries.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we should only have, but it's like I think we had like kind of a cultural history with those people, with the Irish and stuff. We weren't that far removed from
you
them.
can still call that Western civilization.
Now we were still racist as all get out towards the Irish. Irish need not apply,
toward
and things like
anything that wasn't you. I mean, honestly, racism was depending on who you were. And it was against anyone who was
kind
not
of
like you.
culturalism, if you want to, So I mean, but I just think, and like I think of, there's a lot of great, like I'm telling you, the Cubans, there's some patriots when they come over here and stuff like that. There's a lot of countries that are very pro-America.
Yeah, but coincidentally,
based on
a
where
lot
they
of the
came
folks in charge of the White House right now won't allow Cubans to come in.
Yeah,
Why
funny
is
enough.
that? Why is that?
from.
They literally put the brakes on that and say, no, we don't. We're
Every
not.
Cuban I've ever met is the most conservative, like
I know.
flag waving.
Well, you'd have to be if you've been living under communist hell for the last 60 years of your life. Things change.
Well, listen, we've recorded enough for 3 podcasts today. So we're going to take a break, and we look forward to seeing you all next year.
See you guys next year.
By the way, here's a reminder. Do us a favor in the new year and take our podcast link. You do it on Apple, Spotify, what are some other Google, wherever you find this podcast, YouTube, and just share the link with one person.
Betamax.
I'll even write your post for you. Just go, hey, I just listened to this podcast that my buddies put on. Give it a listen or something like that.
Yeah. Just say it'll make your day brighter.
It'll make your day brighter.
Maybe.
So share it. I've had a lot of requests to get the advice column back up, so we need to maybe do that in the new year.
Ooh, yeah.
That
I mean,
was
you've got
helpful.
to ask us for advice to get some sage wisdom.
Yeah. Hey, we got a Twitter and a Facebook now. Ask us some advice.
We've tweeted once.
Okay.
We have 2 followers.
We need to.
Nice. It's growing. It doubled since last time.
Hey, so seriously, leave a review, and we are for those of you who are maybe keeping up with these statistics. I think we have published 21 or 22 podcasts.
This will be number 21
this year.
Yeah,
and we're really kind of excited about that. But even more so, we get these through the hosting site gives us our statistics on downloads or listens or whatever. And the last benchmark that we hit was 1,500. So we are closing in on 2,000 very quickly. Wouldn't that be cool to get that email by the end of the year?
Yeah.
That we've had 2,000
downloads by the
listens or downloads. So do your part, listeners. Spread this thing far and wide. Let people hear us. And one of these days, we're going to get monetized by Dunkin' Donuts, so I don't have to stop in and pay $3 for my coffee as I come in.
You can't afford for you guys not to listen to our podcast.
That's right.
All right, 5-star
And
review.
you can't afford not to.
Share this with at least one other friend. Share it with 4 or 5 if you can. If you don't have that many friends, share it with one. That's fine.
We'll be your friends. You've got 3 in us, right?
Hey, and even most homeless people have a cell phone now, so they can access our podcast. So,
Well, they may not have minutes, though, or data.
they steal Starbucks coffee's Wi-Fi.
If you share this podcast, we may, in fact, end the problem of homelessness.
And depravity. Depravity will be over if you just listen to us. All right. Happy New Year.
The Have Y'all Heard About This podcast is produced by Play It By Ear Audio. Leave us a review, like us, rate us, or subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use. If you wish to contact us or you have a suggestion for the show, email us at hyhatpodcast@gmail.com.